The year was 1867, and Gold Creek was no place for a lady. The camp was filled with rough miners, mud-caked boots, and the sound of picks striking stone. But among those hardened men lived Mary Sullivan, the only woman for 50 miles. She had arrived with her husband, Tom Sullivan, chasing the dream of striking gold and starting a new life. Mary was kind, her presence like sunshine through the fog of whiskey and dust. She cooked for the miners, tended wounds, and reminded them of the world they had left behind. Every man in Gold Creek respected her, not one dared to speak ill of her. But when Mary's belly began to swell, the camp grew quiet. There was no doctor, no midwife, no one who knew how to bring a baby safely into the world. Still, Mary smiled. "Women been birthing since the dawn of time," she'd say. On a cold winter night, screams echoed through the camp. The men waited outside her cabin, hats in hand, praying for the sound of a baby's cry. Hours passed. Then silence. When the door finally opened, Tom Sullivan stumbled out, pale as ash, holding a tiny bundle. "She's gone," he whispered. "But the boy, he's alive." No one spoke. The woman who had brought warmth to their camp was gone, leaving behind a helpless infant, and a father who looked like a man broken beyond repair. The snow fell heavy that night, covering Mary's grave in white. But deep in that cold mountain camp, a new story was just beginning. After Mary's burial, the camp was never the same. The laughter around the fires died, and the men went back to digging gold with heavy hearts. Tom Sullivan didn't speak for days. He just sat beside the cradle, staring at his newborn son, the firelight flickering across his hollow eyes. The baby cried weakly, hungry and cold. One night, Tom picked him up and whispered, "Your mama wanted you to live, boy. I'll see to it you do, no matter what it costs." The miners helped where they could. Old Jack brought milk from his mule's ration. Another man carved a little wooden spoon. But Tom wouldn't let anyone else touch the child too long. He worked the mines by day and rocked the baby by night, his rough hands trembling from exhaustion. He named the boy Luke, after Mary's father, a man of faith. But Tom himself had no more faith left. He buried his wedding ring with Mary and kept only a lock of her golden hair tied in a leather string around his neck. Winter dragged on cruelly. Snow buried the camp roads, and supplies ran low. When Luke fell sick with fever, Tom wrapped him in his coat and sat by the fire all night, praying to a God he no longer believed in. When morning came, Luke's fever broke. The boy lived, and for the first time since Mary's death, Tom felt something stir inside him. Not hope, not yet, but a promise. A promise that her death wouldn't be for nothing. Years passed, and Gold Creek changed little, same dirt, same greed, same weary faces. But one thing was different, Luke Sullivan. By the time he could walk, every miner in camp knew his laugh. He'd chase chickens, stumble through mud, and hand out pebbles like they were treasure. The men who once cursed the earth now softened when he was near. They built him toys from scrap wood and taught him how to whistle. Old Jack even carved a little wooden horse for him, saying, "A camp's no place for a child, but this one, he belongs to us all." Tom, though, remained distant. He loved the boy fiercely, but pain had made him hard. He rarely smiled, never spoke of Mary, and worked longer hours than anyone else. Luke would sit by the mine's edge, waiting for his father to return, eyes bright with admiration. One day, as Tom trudged back from the pit, black with dust, Luke ran to him with a wildflower clutched in his hand. "For Ma," he said softly. Tom froze. His throat tightened. He took the flower, stared at it a long moment, and tucked it into his shirt pocket beside Mary's lock of hair. That night, he sat Luke on his knee by the fire and told him his first story, about how Mary came to Gold Creek and made a camp of lonely men remember kindness. Luke listened, wide-eyed, and whispered, "Then I'll be like her, Pa. I'll make folks happy again." Tom looked into his son's eyes and, for the first time in years, managed a small, broken smile. Maybe, just maybe. Mary's light wasn't gone after all. By the time Luke turned 10, Gold Creek had grown quieter. Some men struck gold and left, others buried their dreams beneath the mountain. But Tom Sullivan stayed. He had no gold worth taking, only a son worth living for. Each morning, before sunrise, Tom would take Luke to the ridge. There, the boy learned to swing a pickaxe, build a fire, and read the signs of the mountain. "Gold's not what makes a man rich," Tom told him once, handing him a rusted shovel. "It's the strength to keep digging, even when your hands bleed." Luke listened, though he never quite understood. His heart was softer than his father's, and he'd often sneak away to help the older miners or bring food to the sick. When Tom found out, he scolded him harshly. "Kindness don't keep you alive out here." Luke looked up, hurt. "Didn't Ma's kindness keep the camp alive, Pa?" The question struck Tom like a hammer. He said nothing, just turned away, because deep down, the boy was right. That winter, a new miner named Reed Carver came to camp. He was slick-tongued, greedy, and always watching others' claims. One evening, he saw Tom's tools and old gold pans, and decided the widower might be hiding something valuable. Tom didn't trust Reed from the start. "Some men don't dig for gold," he told Luke quietly. "They dig for weakness." Luke nodded, but his innocent heart didn't yet understand how danger could wear a smile. Soon, that danger would find them both. Snow kept falling long after the echo of the gunshot faded. Tom Sullivan knelt beside Reed Carver's body, his breath heavy in the frozen air. He hadn't meant to kill the man, only to protect his boy. But death never cared for intentions in the wilderness. Luke stood a few feet away, eyes wide with shock. "Pa, you shot him." Tom turned slowly. "He was gonna hurt you, Luke." Tears welled up in the boy's eyes. "You said Ma hated violence." The words cut deeper than the cold. Tom's throat tightened. "I know, son. I know." He buried Reed in the snow and gathered the tools and gold dust. The fire had gone out, and the night pressed close around them. As they trudged home, Luke walked in silence, his small hand gripping his father's coat. Back in camp, the miners saw Tom return with the boy, and understood more than words could say. No one asked questions. They just nodded quietly, giving father and son their space. That night, Tom sat by the dying fire, staring at his hands. They'd held a baby, built a life, and now taken one. He felt the crushing weight of it all. Luke came and sat beside him. "Pa, are you bad now?" Tom looked at him, eyes red. "No, boy. But sometimes, doing right feels just as heavy as doing wrong." Luke leaned against him, silent. Outside, the storm eased. Inside, a different kind of storm began to calm, one made of guilt, love, and the fragile hope that maybe, someday, they could both forgive. Spring came late to the mountains, melting the snow into silver streams that carried away the pain of winter. Life in Gold Creek began to stir again, new miners arrived, old ones moved on, and the sound of picks echoed once more. But for Tom Sullivan and his son Luke, everything had changed. They no longer dug for gold. Instead, Tom taught Luke how to farm the thin mountain soil, how to hunt without waste, and how to build a cabin strong enough to outlast the storms. Each morning, they visited Mary's grave on the hill above the camp. Tom would brush the dirt from the wooden cross while Luke placed a wildflower beside it. For the first time, Tom didn't feel the crushing weight of loss, only the quiet presence of the woman who had once brought light to this lonely place. One morning, Luke asked, "Pa, will we ever leave Gold Creek?" Tom smiled faintly. "Maybe one day. But your ma's here, and so's the best part of me." Years later, when Luke grew into a man, the camp had long gone silent, the gold dried up, and the miners faded like ghosts. But Luke stayed. He rebuilt the old cabin, planted apple trees where the mine once stood, and kept his mother's memory alive in every story he told. When folks passed through the valley, they'd see the orchard and ask who lived there. "Just a miner's son," Luke would say, smiling softly, "raised by a man who learned gold wasn't found in the ground, but in the people we love." And as the sun rose over Gold Creek, the land seemed to shine, not with gold, but with peace. Reed Carver had a way of talking that made men forget their instincts. He'd sit by the fire, spinning tales of gold veins thicker than a man's arm, and the camp would listen, half believing. But Tom Sullivan wasn't fooled. He'd seen men like Reed before, the kind who used charm like a shovel, digging into others' trust. Still, Tom couldn't stop Luke from being drawn to him. The boy saw Reed as daring, adventurous, everything his stern father wasn't. One afternoon, while Tom was down in the shaft, Reed found Luke alone near the creek. "Your pa's been hiding a claim, hasn't he?" he asked, his tone casual. Luke frowned. "Pa don't hide things." Reed smiled thinly. "Sure he does. Why else would he work a dead vein? He's sitting on gold, boy, gold meant for you." The idea sparked something in Luke's young mind. He'd always wondered why they never seemed to have enough, why his father's hands bled every night for so little. When Tom returned, he found Luke quiet, distant. That night, Luke asked softly, "Pa, do you got gold somewhere? For Ma's grave maybe?" Tom stared at him, shocked. "Where'd you hear that?" Luke hesitated, then mumbled, "Nowhere." Tom's voice hardened. "You stay away from Reed Carver, you hear me?" Luke nodded, but his eyes fell to the floor. The next morning, Tom's tools were gone, and so was Reed. Footprints led toward the mountains, with smaller ones beside them. Tom dropped to his knees in the snow, his heart pounding. "Luke," he whispered. The boy was gone, and the past was about to repeat itself in the cruelest way imaginable. The sky turned black before noon, clouds rolling over the mountains like angry beasts. Tom Sullivan strapped on his coat, grabbed his rifle, and set out into the blizzard. Every step crunched in the snow, every breath burned in his chest, but he didn't stop. "Luke," he shouted into the wind. "Boy, answer me." Only silence answered back. The tracks were fading fast beneath the storm, but Tom followed them through ravines and over frozen creeks. Hours passed, his fingers numb, his beard coated in ice. He could barely see, but a father's instinct guided him forward. By dusk, he found a campfire, weak and sputtering under a pine tree. Reed Carver sat beside it, clutching Tom's stolen tools and a small sack of gold dust. And beside him, huddled under a blanket, was Luke. Tom raised his rifle. "Step away from the boy." Reed smirked, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "Easy, Sullivan. I just showed the kid where the real gold is. Ain't that right, Luke?" Luke looked up, trembling. "Pa, I didn't know he'd." "Quiet." Reed barked, grabbing the boy by the collar. Tom's voice was low, cold as the snow. "Let him go, or I swear." Reed laughed. "You think I'm scared of a broken man with nothing left to lose?" The wind howled, and in that moment, a single shot split the night. Reed staggered back, eyes wide, the snow beneath him turning red. Tom dropped the rifle, heart hammering. Luke was safe, but